Alex was just your average guy. He wasn't an astronaut, a scientist, or anyone who knew anything about the vast mysteries of space. In fact, before today, his biggest adventure involved trying to fix a broken coffee machine, which, let's be honest, was more of a disaster than a success. He could barely manage that, and now he was somehow about to end up in the middle of a cosmic phenomenon. But hey, that's life, right? Mornings were always a struggle for Alex. He'd wake up to his alarm blaring, barely finding the energy to roll out of bed, and then he'd somehow manage to spill coffee on his shirt as he was getting ready for work. "Classic me," he'd mutter to himself, wiping away the mess with a grimace. The whole process was like a slow-motion disaster, every part of it a tedious reminder of how his life wasn't exactly a space adventure. No, instead of navigating galaxies or chatting with aliens, Alex spent his days figuring out how to pay rent on time and getting stuck in traffic jams that could make anyone lose their sanity. "Some days the hardest part of my life is just finding a parking spot," he'd joke to himself, gripping the wheel of his rusted car. Did Alex think he'd end up in space today? Well, no. He was just trying to get his caffeine fix, but here we are. One minute he was waiting for the coffee machine to brew, grumbling about the fact that it always took way longer than advertised, and the next, boom, suddenly everything went haywire. It wasn't like Alex had intentionally decided to mess around with any alien tech. In fact, he had no clue that the device in front of him wasn't just some weirdly shiny button on a random piece of junk that had somehow appeared in his kitchen. He had been staring at it for a good 5 minutes thinking, how on earth did I end up with this thing? He had no idea it was some kind of superpowered interdimensional device, but there it was. Naturally, Alex, being the curious and a little reckless person he was, pressed the button. Now Alex didn't exactly feel the wormhole open, at least not right away. 1 second he was holding this shiny object, and the next the room around him started to distort like a bad Wi-Fi connection. The walls warped, the air buzzed with static, and everything turned a shade of purple that made him think he'd entered some kind of psychedelic nightmare. "Well, this is new," he said, trying to keep his voice steady despite the fact that the universe was apparently rearranging itself in real time. Before he could process what was happening, he was yanked off his feet and flung into the unknown. Space, time. Who even knew? All Alex knew was that one moment he was trying to fix his coffee machine, and the next he was spiraling through what could only be described as a space-time hole. "Great! Fantastic!" he muttered sarcastically as he tumbled through it. "I was just trying to make a cup of joe, and now I'm in some weird cosmic roller coaster. This had to happen to me." As Alex flailed helplessly, spinning through the endless void, it was clear that the universe had other plans for him. How did he get here? Why him? All he could do was brace himself for whatever wild ride was coming next. He wasn't sure what exactly he was getting into, but given his luck, it probably wasn't going to be pretty. The last thing he remembered before everything went black was a small voice in the back of his mind wondering, am I going to be stuck in space forever? Or will I just wake up in an alien cafeteria somewhere, confused and really, really hungry? And just like that, Alex had gone from dealing with coffee problems to accidentally breaking the very laws of the universe. The journey had begun, and there was no going back now. When Alex finally stopped spinning and got his bearings, he found himself in a room full of what could only be described as, well, aliens. He wasn't sure what exactly he expected space to look like, but it definitely wasn't this. There were creatures of every shape and size, some looking like giant blobs, others resembling a bizarre mix of animals Alex had never seen before. The first one that caught his attention was an alien that looked like if a jellyfish and a cactus had a baby. Its body was all translucent and wobbly, yet covered in spikes that looked like they were straight out of a spiny desert plant. "You know," Alex muttered to himself, You kind of remind me of the plants in my grandmother's garden, but with more jellyfish thrown in. Of course, no one was paying attention to Alex's sarcastic observations. The aliens were too busy staring at him in complete and utter confusion. It wasn't like they'd never seen a human before. Well, actually, they hadn't. But no one had prepared Alex for the way they all just froze and blinked at him, like he was some kind of alien curiosity. One of the creatures, a tall, insect-like alien, took a step forward and cocked its head at him. Its multiple eyes blinked in sync, which should have been unsettling, but somehow wasn't as much as Alex thought it would be. Hello? Alex said, trying to sound as confident as possible, even though he was completely freaking out inside. The insect alien looked at him for what felt like an eternity before it spoke in a voice that sounded like a combination of 1,000 voices buzzing at once. "You are not from here." "Not?" Alex smiled awkwardly. "No kidding, Sherlock, and you are—" He trailed off, gesturing vaguely at the group of aliens around him. They stared back, blinking slowly, as if they hadn't quite figured out what to make of him. He cleared his throat. "Well, I'm Alex. And clearly, I'm a little lost." The aliens exchanged glances, probably confused by his casual tone and the weird way he introduced himself. "You are the humanoid form?" one of them asked, a voice more high-pitched than Alex expected. It was a weird question, but he figured he'd just go with it. "Yeah, I'm a human. You know, from Earth. You guys ever heard of Earth?" he asked, trying to sound friendly and not like a total tourist. The aliens didn't respond at all. Instead, they just kept staring, as if they couldn't decide whether they were amazed or horrified. Trying to break the silence, Alex thought it would be a good idea to offer his usual greeting, something every human knew how to do, the handshake. He casually extended his hand, smiling like he was trying to make a good first impression. "Okay, so, back on Earth, this is how we say hello," Alex said, as if they would totally understand. The alien in front of him, the one with jellyfish-like tendrils, blinked and looked down at his outstretched hand. It tilted its head again, looking back up at Alex with a confused expression. "What is this?" it asked. Alex, thinking this was just a little cultural difference, tried to explain. "It's a handshake, you know, like a way of saying hello. It's a common greeting on Earth." Instead of shaking Alex's hand, the alien recoiled as if Alex had just offered it a live grenade. It shuddered and said in a voice that was almost alarmed, "You offer me your appendage?" Alex blinked, taken aback. "What? No, it's just a handshake," he repeated, laughing nervously. "I'm not offering you my appendage, okay? It's just a greeting, like a, 'Hey, how's it going?' kind of thing." The alien looked even more confused. "This is a greeting?" it asked, its voice trembling slightly. The other aliens around them watched the interaction with wide eyes, some even taking a step back as if Alex had just done something deeply offensive. It was becoming clear that Alex's Earth customs weren't going to translate well in this new world. "Okay, look," he said, trying to save face. "No appendages, no weird alien rituals, just a simple gesture of friendship." He pulled his hand back awkwardly and laughed. "Maybe we should just skip this whole handshake thing and go for a high five next time." The aliens stood there, still watching him, with what could only be described as intense curiosity and a little bit of fear. Alex sighed, feeling more like a confused tourist than a galactic diplomat. "Guess I'll just stick to words for now." The misunderstanding hung in the air like a bad joke that no one really got. Alex wasn't sure what had just happened, but he was certain he had just made things way more complicated than they needed to be. "Well, that went well," he muttered under his breath, hoping the alien would stop looking at him like he was about to start some intergalactic war. The alien didn't respond, but it was clear the situation wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. Before Alex knew it, he was sitting in the middle of what could only be described as a high-stakes galactic political discussion. He had no idea how he got there, but the room was filled with alien leaders, all shouting over one another in what sounded like a chaotic mess of clicks, growls, and strange buzzing noises. Everyone was arguing about something he couldn't even begin to understand, but it was clear that whatever it was serious. Alex tried to sit back and blend in, hoping that maybe, just maybe, he could sneak out of this mess. He wasn't an expert in space politics. Heck, he wasn't even an expert in Earth politics. But there he was, stuck in the middle of this alien debate, with no idea how to get out. The aliens around him seemed to assume he knew what was going on, and they started looking to him for answers. "What do you think, human?" one of the leaders asked, with all 6 of its eyes focused on him. Alex blinked, his mind racing. What do I think?" he said, trying to buy himself some time. "Well, from what I gather, this is like watching a 5-hour reality show, but with less drama and more, I don't know, tentacles and angry stares." The room fell silent. A few of the alien leaders blinked at him, as if they couldn't believe what they were hearing. Alex's sarcasm was completely lost on them. They were so caught up in their own complicated political drama that they couldn't even appreciate a little humor. But Alex was too far gone at this point. He just shrugged and leaned back in his chair, figuring there was no harm in at least trying to make light of the situation. One of the alien leaders, an enormous creature that looked like a cross between a giant squid and a cactus, finally spoke up. "Are you mocking our political system?" it demanded. Alex gave a half-hearted laugh and raised his hands in defense. No, not at all," he said, trying to sound sincere. "I just don't exactly get what's going on. You're all fighting over, what? More planets? More resources? What's the deal?" The creature blinked at him again, its many eyes narrowing as it tried to make sense of what Alex had just said. The room went back to arguing, and Alex realized that despite his cluelessness, the aliens seemed to respect his opinion just a bit more than they had before. Maybe they thought he was some kind of diplomat, though how they came to that conclusion was beyond him. Somehow, in the middle of all this confusion, Alex ended up being asked to mediate the whole thing. Of course, it wasn't by choice. He had no idea how it happened, but there he was, sitting at the head of the table, surrounded by alien leaders who were all looking to him for guidance. The pressure was mounting, and Alex was starting to feel like he was in way over his head. "All right, Alex, you've got this," he whispered to himself, hoping that somehow his sarcasm and jokes would be enough to get him through this absurd situation. How hard could it be to mediate a peace talk when you don't even know what anyone's arguing about? "Human, you will mediate," one of the leaders ordered, its voice deep and booming as if it had no doubts that Alex was capable of such a task. Alex blinked, completely stunned. "Wait, me? I barely know anything about your politics. I'm just a guy from Earth who can't even fix his own coffee machine properly." But the aliens didn't seem to care about that. They were looking to him as though he were the galaxy's answer to all their problems. "Fine, I'll give it a shot," Alex said, suddenly realizing he had no way out of this. He quickly decided that the only way to get through this was to use what he knew, Earth analogies. They may not understand human politics, but surely they'd get some basic stuff, right? Okay, so let's say you're all like a group of kids fighting over the last piece of cake. The cake is the planet or the resource or whatever, but everyone wants it, and nobody wants to share, right? The alien leaders stared at him blankly. Alex scratched his head and kept going. "Right, so what we need here is a little compromise. Maybe we all take a bite of the cake, and then we figure out how to split the rest. You can't just hog it all, because that's when you end up in a food fight." The leaders exchanged looks, obviously puzzled. But to Alex's surprise, one of them, a small, three-eyed creature, nodded slowly. "You are wise, human," it said, as if Alex had just delivered some profound piece of wisdom. "We will eat the cake together." Alex stared at the creature, confused. "Wait, you're agreeing to share the cake now?" he asked, The alien nodded again, looking very pleased with itself. Yes, we will eat the cake together. You, human, have made us see reason. At this point, Alex just couldn't hold back his laughter. You guys are serious, over cake. Okay, fine, we'll go with that. Everyone gets a bite and then we figure out how to split the rest. But if anyone's going to start throwing cake at each other, I'm out. It turned out that his bizarre analogy worked. The room, which had been filled with shouting and anger just moments before, now seemed to settle down. The aliens weren't entirely sure what had just happened, but they were beginning to trust Alex. He wasn't a diplomat, he wasn't a leader, and he definitely wasn't a negotiator. But for some reason, his awkward humor and strange analogies had somehow made him into the galaxy's latest authority figure. By the time the peace talks were resolved, and by resolved, Alex meant they agreed to share the metaphorical cake, Alex was feeling both proud and completely baffled. He'd just mediated a galactic peace talk, sort of. Who knew cake could be the solution to a centuries-old political conflict? And just like that, Alex was no longer just a lost human in space. He was now somehow a political figure. How that happened? He had no idea. But the aliens seemed to think it was the best thing that had ever happened to them. And honestly, Alex wasn't sure what was scarier, the fact that he had just pulled off a peace talk, or that they wanted him to do it again. The aliens were clearly proud of their technology, and Alex could hardly blame them. After all, they had gadgets that were way beyond anything he had ever seen on Earth. They could teleport from one place to another, use energy shields that looked like glowing bubbles, and communicate through thought alone. To say Alex felt a little out of his depth would be an understatement. It was like being in a tech store that only sold things he could never afford. "Wait, you can teleport?" Alex said, trying to mask his shock with a weak laugh. "Cool. I can't even get my phone to charge without issues. Pretty sure the charge is just a decoration at this point." The aliens didn't seem to find this humorous, but Alex didn't care. He had to admit he was impressed. Watching an alien teleport across the room was like seeing someone do a magic trick right in front of you. One second they were standing there, and the next they were somewhere else entirely. If Alex tried to do that, he'd probably end up stuck in a wall or something. "Your technology is so advanced," Alex said, trying to sound like he understood what was going on. "I mean, this is like Star Trek stuff. The only thing I've got back home is a really good coffee maker. When it actually works, that is." The aliens looked at each other as if Alex had just insulted them. "You do not understand the importance of what you are seeing," one of the aliens said, its voice sharp. "We have mastered the art of space-time manipulation." "Yes, space-time are great," Alex muttered under his breath. He had no clue what they were talking about, but he wasn't going to admit that. Instead, he tried to make himself sound more knowledgeable. "I mean, sure, we've got some cool tech back home too, like self-driving cars and electric toothbrushes." The aliens blinked at him, clearly not impressed. Alex knew they had way cooler stuff, but it was hard to keep up. They had gadgets that seemed to do everything at once, from manipulating gravity to instantly translating languages. As he watched them play with their technology, Alex felt like he was back in high school, surrounded by all the kids who actually understood the class material while he tried to fake his way through. After a while, Alex was handed a device and told to fix it. Apparently, the ship's navigation system had a minor glitch, and they thought maybe a human's common sense might do the trick. Alex stared at the device in his hand, which looked like a cross between a blender and a calculator, with buttons and flashing lights all over it. "All right," Alex said, trying to act confident, even though he had no idea what he was doing. "Let's see what we can do here. Piece of cake." He pressed a few buttons, expecting the device to make some kind of noise or do something cool, but instead it made a strange whirring sound, and then nothing happened. Alex frowned and poked the buttons again. "Come on, work with me here." It didn't work. The device just sat there, its lights blinking in an almost mocking way. "Maybe I missed a step," Alex muttered, trying to figure out what was going wrong. He looked around for any instructions, but the aliens didn't seem to have any manuals. Instead, they were watching him intently, probably waiting for some sort of miracle. Alex wasn't feeling particularly miraculous at the moment, but he pressed a few more buttons anyway. Suddenly, there was a loud pop, and the entire ship's lights flickered. The navigation console started flashing red, and a warning alarm blared from every corner of the room. Alex looked up, panic spreading across his face. I'm going to go ahead and guess that wasn't supposed to happen." The aliens stared at him, their many eyes wide in disbelief. One of them clicked its mandibles nervously. "What have you done?" Nothing," Alex said, trying to backpedal. "I just pressed a couple of buttons, you know. Common sense. Shouldn't be a big deal, right?" The ship's entire control system was now glitching. Lights were flashing all around, and a loud, unnerving sound was coming from what Alex assumed was the engine room. A few of the aliens scrambled toward the controls, trying to fix the situation, but it was clear that Alex had made things worse. The ship's alarms were blaring, and Alex had no idea how to turn them off. "Okay, maybe I shouldn't have touched anything," he said, now feeling slightly embarrassed. "Human," one of the aliens said, its voice filled with frustration. "You must never tamper with our systems." Alex gave an awkward laugh, his face turning slightly red. "Yeah, lesson learned." The aliens got to work quickly, fixing the mess Alex had created. He stood there, rubbing the back of his neck, trying to avoid eye contact. "I'm pretty sure I just broke intergalactic peace by pressing the wrong button," he muttered under his breath. "That's gotta be a record." Finally, the ship stabilized, and the aliens turned to him, their expressions unreadable. "You have much to learn, human," one of them said. Alex nodded, his face still flushed. "No kidding," he replied, "but at least I didn't blow up the ship. Small victories, right?" As the room calmed down, Alex realized one thing. When it came to alien technology, it was best to just leave it to the experts. He'd stick to fixing his coffee machine and calling it a day. It wasn't long before Alex realized that something very strange was happening. What started as a simple misunderstanding, followed by a series of increasingly ridiculous events, had somehow turned him into a galactic legend. He'd never planned on becoming anyone's hero, or anyone's prophet or deity for that matter, but here he was, the most famous human in the galaxy, and it had all started with something as absurd as a sneeze. The first incident happened while he was casually walking down the ship's corridor. It was a typical day, well, as typical as things could get when you're stuck in an alien spaceship, and Alex was just minding his business, trying not to mess anything up. He felt a sneeze coming on, and before he could stop it, let out an enormous "Achoo!" That's when everything went crazy. The sneeze wasn't just loud. It was apparently so powerful that the entire ship's lighting flickered. The aliens who were nearby immediately froze in place. "What was that?" one of them asked, eyes wide with shock. "What did he just do?" "What?" Alex said, looking confused. "It's just a sneeze. Humans do that all the time." The aliens didn't seem convinced. In fact, they looked at him like he had just unleashed a force of nature. No, this cannot be," one of the leaders said, shaking its head. This is a sign. He has summoned the ancient powers." At first, Alex thought they were messing with him. But then word spread across the ship, and suddenly all the aliens were acting strangely reverent around him. They began calling him the one who sneezed, and to his utter disbelief, some of them started worshipping him like he was some sort of god. The whole thing spiraled out of control when, during an official meeting with alien diplomats, Alex accidentally knocked over a coffee cup. The spill caused a small electrical malfunction, and once again, chaos followed. The aliens around him gasped, as if the coffee spill was the most sacred act to ever occur in the history of space travel. "This is it," one alien shouted. "He has spilled the sacred drink. He is truly the chosen one." Alex could hardly believe his ears. "Seriously?" he asked, looking around. "A coffee spill? That's what's making me a god now. I mean, I always thought coffee was powerful, but this is next level." It wasn't long before the rumors spread far beyond the ship, reaching entire star systems. To Alex's complete surprise, he started receiving messages from alien leaders and civilizations, all treating him like he was a superstar. Everywhere he went, aliens greeted him with awe, offering strange gifts and paying homage to him as if he had just performed some sort of cosmic miracle. One day, a particularly enthusiastic alien, who looked like a giant floating jellyfish with glowing tentacles, approached him and said, "Great One, you have shown us the power of the sneeze. We shall build a monument in your honor." Alex blinked at the jellyfish alien, unsure whether to laugh or cry. "I don't need a monument," he said, feeling incredibly awkward. "I mean, I just sneezed and spilled my coffee. I didn't invent space travel or anything cool." The alien was undeterred. "No, Great One, you are the one who sneezed, the one who has taught us the ways of the great powers. You are a prophet." Alex shook his head. Okay, let's just call me the accidental hero and move on, all right?" But the aliens were not satisfied. No, they were absolutely convinced that Alex's accidental actions were the key to a new era in galactic history. Over time, his legend grew, and so did the number of beings who looked to him for guidance. Alex was now revered as a deity, his every move watched and analyzed by millions of alien species. He started to joke that the only thing he hadn't been worshipped for yet was his ability to destroy a pizza in record time. But even as things got more ridiculous, Alex couldn't help but roll with it. "Apparently, I'm now a god," he said one day, half smiling as he sat in the ship's main hall. "Guess that means no more paying taxes, right?" His sarcastic comment made a few of the aliens chuckle, but they still took his words seriously. "No taxes, Great One," one alien said, bowing deeply. "You have transcended the need for such things." At that point, Alex started to get a little nervous. It was one thing to have aliens look up to him out of pure confusion or a strange series of accidents. It was another thing entirely to realize they expected him to actually do something heroic. But what? He was just a regular guy from Earth who had gotten lost in a wormhole. He wasn't about to save an entire galaxy just because his sneeze had been loud enough to break the sound barrier. One day, after being asked to address an entire alien council on the meaning of the sneeze and its deeper cosmic significance, Alex couldn't help but wonder if this whole legend thing had gone too far. "I mean, seriously, I've been here for a week, and now I'm the galaxy's hero," he said to himself, laughing nervously. "Next thing you know, they'll want me to perform miracles. I'm barely keeping my coffee down." Despite his growing discomfort, Alex found himself stuck with this bizarre new role. The aliens weren't letting him go anytime soon, and the more he tried to deny it, the more they treated him like the savior of the universe. It was all getting out of hand, and while Alex didn't want to be rude about it, he just wasn't sure how to handle this unexpected fame. In the end, Alex realized that being a legend wasn't as glamorous as it seemed. It came with expectations, pressure, and a lot of very awkward conversations with aliens who were convinced he had some sort of divine insight. But hey, if being a galactic hero meant never having to worry about parking tickets or apparently taxes, maybe it wasn't all bad. He just hoped that one day the aliens would figure out that he wasn't actually the god they thought he was, and that all of this was the result of a sneeze, a coffee spill, and a lot of misunderstanding. Alex nodded eagerly. Exactly. Look, it's like trying to divide a pizza among 20 people. No one's going to agree on who gets the biggest slice, so instead of fighting over it, just grab a slice, take what you need, and move on. Let's just all take a slice and shut up. The room went silent, as if Alex had just dropped a truth bomb. The aliens exchanged confused glances. It wasn't exactly the solution they were expecting, but Alex was right about one thing. Fighting over the resource wasn't going to get them anywhere. It was like trying to solve a problem with more fighting, which, as Alex pointed out, would only make things worse. One of the alien leaders, who had been grumbling about the whole situation, spoke up. "What if we all take a slice? You mean to share it?" "Yeah," Alex said, feeling oddly confident. "It's better than getting nothing, right? Look, if you guys keep fighting, you'll end up with nothing. At least with this, everyone gets something." The aliens seemed to be thinking it over. It wasn't a perfect solution, but maybe it was the only one that would work. Alex didn't have all the answers, but he was pretty sure that peace wasn't going to come from more violence. And for once, the aliens actually seemed to be listening to him, which was kind of impressive, even though it felt like everything was happening way too fast. After Alex's bold suggestion, things started moving quickly. The leaders of each faction came together, agreeing, somewhat reluctantly, to at least consider his pizza analogy. They were still skeptical, but at least there was a chance they could avoid war. After hours of arguing, some food was brought in, and the factions began discussing how to share the resource fairly. Alex had no idea how they were going to work it out, but the fact that they were even talking seemed like a win. In the end, Alex's ridiculous analogy worked. The factions agreed on a plan to share the resource peacefully, though it took a lot of back and forth to get there. Alex had to keep reminding them that if they didn't agree, they'd be stuck with nothing, which finally got through to them. "I can't believe that actually worked," Alex said to himself, laughing in disbelief. "All I did was talk about pizza and farts, and now these guys are actually agreeing on something." It was official. Alex had just prevented a galactic war. He, the same guy who didn't even know how to use an alien spaceship's control panel, had somehow saved the galaxy. And what was even stranger was that the aliens actually credited him with the success. They were calling him the hero of the hour, treating him like he was some sort of intergalactic genius. "Who knew farting in space would make me a legend?" Alex said, shaking his head in amusement. "Maybe I should try being the galactic king next." Despite how strange everything had become, Alex couldn't help but feel a bit proud. He had saved the day, not by some grand act of heroism, but by simply using the same ridiculous logic that had gotten him into trouble in the first place. The aliens had finally agreed to share the resource, and the galaxy was safe for now. As Alex stood there, watching the factions shake hands, or their equivalent of shaking hands, he realized that sometimes the best solutions came from the most unexpected places. Maybe being human, with all its flaws and misunderstandings, wasn't such a bad thing after all, and in the end, maybe it was just what the galaxy needed. After everything Alex had been through, from accidentally starting a war with a fart to somehow saving the galaxy by comparing intergalactic conflict to pizza, it shouldn't have been a surprise that the aliens were now offering him a permanent job. It was beyond Alex's understanding, but the truth was staring him in the face. The aliens were offering him the position of a galactic ambassador. "Yes, Alex," one of the alien leaders said, its multiple eyes blinking rapidly in excitement. "You have proven yourself to be a neutral party, capable of mediating even the most difficult conflicts." "Me?" Alex said, looking around in disbelief. "I can't even figure out how to use your spaceship's controls. Why would you want me to be your ambassador? I'm a walking disaster." The alien leader, who looked like a giant pile of glowing jelly, seemed unbothered by Alex's self-deprecating remarks. "You are unique," it said. "Your chaotic nature has a certain charm. The galaxy respects your unpredictability. Right, Alex said, trying to hide his amusement. So I'm basically the new face of the galaxy's latest pizza franchise, huh? He continued sarcastically. Sure, I'll be the ambassador. I'll wear a snazzy suit and make speeches about unity, while secretly wondering how to avoid more awkward situations. The alien leaders nodded, as if Alex's sarcasm were some sort of profound insight. Exactly. You will represent the galaxy's interests, spread peace, and ensure that conflicts like the one you helped resolve do not happen again. Your unique perspective is exactly what we need. Alex let out a long sigh. Well, in that case, I guess I'm officially the ambassador of chaos. He smiled wryly, trying to make light of the situation. And to think, just a few weeks ago, I was still figuring out how to get to work without getting lost. Now, I'm an ambassador in space. My life's gotten weird, huh? Despite the ridiculousness of it all, Alex realized that he was now at the center of something far bigger than he ever imagined. He was the face of peace, or at least he was supposed to be. He had no idea what he was doing, but apparently that was the exact skill set the galaxy needed right now. It wasn't that he didn't want to help. It was just that every time he tried to make peace between alien factions, he somehow made things worse. And by worse, he meant really worse. But that didn't stop Alex. He approached the situation with his typical sarcastic humor and Earth logic, hoping it would work. One day, he found himself in a heated negotiation between two alien races who were fighting over a vast, resource-rich planet. One group of aliens looked like enormous lizards, while the other looked like giant, talking squids. They both seemed to think Alex was some kind of expert, despite the fact that he was just a human who had been accidentally thrust into the role. Well, let's break this down, Alex said, trying to sound confident. You both want the same planet, right? So it's like fighting over who gets the last slice of pizza. Again. But here's the thing. If you both keep arguing, you're going to end up with nothing. Let's all just grab a slice, settle down, and move on. The lizard-like alien leader scowled. We do not eat pizza, it hissed. I'm not talking about actual pizza, Alex said, his patience starting to wear thin. I'm saying you need to work it out without getting all territorial about it. You both want the planet, so let's figure out how to share it. At that, the squid-like leader leaned in. Are you suggesting we compromise with these lizards? We are their superior. Alex threw his hands up in frustration. Look, I don't care if you're superior or not. All I know is, if you don't figure this out, you're both going to end up with nothing, and that's just dumb. So, share the planet, work together, and maybe, you'll get something out of it. The lizard leader's eyes narrowed. You insult us, human. Oh, come on. I didn't mean to insult you. I'm just trying to make a point, Alex said quickly, trying to smooth things over. He realized, too late, that his bluntness wasn't exactly winning him any fans. But somehow, by accident, his message had gotten through. The lizard and squid leaders paused, looking at each other, before reluctantly agreeing to Alex's plan. After all, sharing the planet was the only way forward. Alex sighed in relief, glad that the negotiation was over. Well, that wasn't so bad, he said, only to be met with a confused stare from the alien leaders. Oh, you're welcome, Alex said sarcastically. I saved your planet. Don't forget to send me a thank you card. In the end, Alex's unexpected success was met with confusion and reverence. The aliens didn't always understand his methods, but they appreciated the results. And somehow, despite the madness, Alex had found his new place in the galaxy. Alex had thought things were going smoothly. After all, he had accidentally saved the galaxy more than once, and people seemed to like him, or at least they were starting to. But nothing prepared him for what came next. The galaxy was on the brink of a final conflict, one that could determine its future, and as usual, Alex was the one they turned to for a solution. "So now, I'm a space hero," Alex said, pacing around the room with a sarcastic grin. "I didn't even finish high school, and now I'm supposed to be the galaxy's moral compass. You've got to be kidding me." But despite his disbelief, the alien leaders were serious. This time, the stakes were much higher. A new alien faction had emerged, one that was more aggressive and ruthless than anything the galaxy had ever seen. They wanted control of the most valuable resource in the galaxy, a massive energy source that could power entire star systems. The problem was, this resource was located in a neutral zone, and everyone agreed it should be shared. But the new faction was pushing for total control, threatening to destroy everything if they didn't get what they wanted. The alien leaders gathered around Alex, their faces filled with concern. They had tried diplomacy, they had tried everything, but the new faction wasn't interested in talking. War seemed inevitable, and Alex, the accidental ambassador, was once again called in to fix the mess. "Look, I'm just a guy," Alex said, shaking his head. "I'm not a diplomat, I'm not a politician, I'm just here because of a sneeze and a fart. What do you want me to do? Talk some sense into these guys with my stellar charm?" The alien leaders looked at him with wide eyes. They expected him to have some kind of miracle solution. They thought his human touch would be enough to convince the new faction to back down. Alex rubbed his face, exhausted. "All right, I'll try my best, but no promises. And just so we're clear, I'm not about to get into a big philosophical debate with anyone. I'm just here to make them listen, and I can only do that with sarcasm and pizza analogies." "Your words have worked in the past," one of the leaders said. "We believe you can do it again." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Right. So now I'm the chosen one of galactic peace, huh? Awesome." He wasn't sure how this had happened, but somehow everyone seemed to think he was the galaxy's best hope. The new faction leader, a large, intimidating alien with 4 eyes and an armor-like exoskeleton, sat in front of Alex, looking as serious as possible. "Human," the leader said in a deep, gravelly voice, "I've heard of your reputation. You have meddled in galactic affairs before, but now you must do more. The energy source is ours, and we will not share." Alex stood there, trying to think of a way to diffuse the situation. He had no idea what kind of solution could possibly work this time. He wasn't some kind of space diplomat. He was just Alex. But then it hit him. He wasn't going to outsmart these aliens with politics or war. He needed to use Earth logic, something simple, something they could understand. "All right, listen," Alex started, pacing around like he was giving the speech of his life. "Here's the deal. The energy source, it's like a giant bucket of fries." The aliens looked at him, clearly confused, but he powered on. "You've got a giant bucket of fries, right? Now you can't just grab them all for yourself. If you do, everyone else is going to get mad, and you'll end up eating a cold, soggy fry in the corner. But if you share the fries, everyone gets a taste, and guess what? You don't have to fight about it." The alien leader blinked, clearly not following. Alex continued, "It's not hard. You take some fries, you let the others take some, and you all go home happy. But if you start fighting over them, no one gets fries, and that's when you end up with nothing." The room was silent. Alex had no idea if they were going to take him seriously. In fact, he wasn't even sure he believed his own analogy. But somehow, it seemed to make more sense than anything else they had tried. The leader of the new faction seemed to consider Alex's words for a long moment. "Fries?" the alien asked, its multiple eyes narrowing as it tried to process the concept. "You wish us to share fries?" "Exactly," Alex said with a grin. "It's just like that. You can have your share of the energy, but if you try to take everything, you're going to lose it all." To his surprise, the alien leader didn't immediately refuse or make threats. Instead, it nodded slowly, as if understanding the point. Perhaps this sharing is a better way. Alex didn't know how it worked, but it did. The other alien leaders, hearing the analogy, slowly began to agree. They didn't quite get the fries part, but they understood the idea of sharing and cooperation. The new faction, surprisingly, agreed to negotiate a deal for joint ownership of the energy source. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. As Alex stood there, watching the alien leaders shake hands, or whatever they called it in their species, he couldn't believe it. He had just solved a galaxy-wide conflict by comparing energy to fries. Fries. It was beyond absurd, but somehow it worked. "Well, I'll be," Alex said with a shrug. "I just told them to chill and share some fries. Is that so difficult?" The alien leaders looked at him with a mix of confusion and awe. "You have saved us," one said, bowing in respect. "Your words have united us, human. You truly are a prophet." Alex laughed. "Prophet, huh? Guess that's just another word for guy who makes bad food analogies." But despite the humor, Alex couldn't deny it. He had saved the day again. And while the aliens were still getting used to his chaotic approach, it seemed that his human touch had actually made a difference. Who knew that a simple Earth logic lesson could prevent a galactic war? Maybe being the ambassador of chaos wasn't so bad after all. As Alex sat back in his quarters aboard the alien spaceship, he couldn't help but reflect on how strange his journey had been. Just a few weeks ago, he had been a regular guy, struggling to make it through his average Earth life. He hadn't been trying to become a hero or a galactic diplomat. In fact, the only things he knew about space were what he'd seen in movies. But somehow, here he was, the human who sneezed his way into fame and had ended up solving galactic conflicts. It was insane. Who could have guessed that one accidental sneeze, followed by an equally random coffee spill and a fart, would lead him to this point? One minute he was making awkward jokes to confused aliens. The next he was stopping wars, negotiating peace, and being hailed as a hero by entire star systems. The whole thing felt like one long, bizarre dream. Who knew that one fart in space could alter the course of galactic history? Alex said to himself, chuckling. I guess I'm like the space Einstein now. Next up, world peace. He still couldn't believe it. Alex wasn't some grand thinker or cosmic genius. He wasn't some spacefaring knight who had been trained for years in the arts of diplomacy and warfare. He was just a guy who had stumbled into the galaxy by accident, and somehow, through a mix of sarcasm, common sense, and pure dumb luck, had managed to fix problems that seemed impossible to solve. The aliens, who once thought humans were nothing more than primitive, bumbling creatures, now treated Alex like a savior. He had become a living legend, the one human who had managed to unite factions, prevent wars, and bring peace to the galaxy, all while cracking jokes and making food analogies. The whole thing was so absurd that Alex often caught himself laughing. I mean, seriously, he thought, they're trusting me to be the galaxy's peacekeeper. Me! It was strange to be a hero when he didn't feel like one. He didn't have superpowers, didn't have any fancy technology, and he sure as heck wasn't an expert in any galactic law or politics. All he had was his wit and his ability to make everyone else's problems seem smaller with a few sarcastic remarks. But somehow, it worked. The aliens respected him. And for reasons Alex couldn't quite figure out, they saw him as a symbol of something they needed, a reminder that peace could be simple if they just worked together. But as much as Alex had become a galactic figure, He knew the work wasn't done. In fact, just as he was starting to relax, the call came. The voice on the other end of the communication screen was familiar. It was one of the alien leaders, this time the giant jellyfish-like alien who had once worshipped his sneeze. "Alex," the alien said in its usual serious tone, "we need your help again. There's a new problem, one that requires your unique approach." Alex sighed, but he couldn't help but smile. "Of course there is. I guess being a hero never really ends. What is it this time? A war over dessert?" He had learned that the universe had a knack for finding new ways to get him involved in strange conflicts. "No, not dessert," the jellyfish alien replied, "but it is a delicate situation involving multiple factions. We believe your human touch is needed once more." Alex rolled his eyes, but the truth was he couldn't say no. He'd already made such a mess of space politics that it seemed only fair that he stick around to fix it. Besides, in a weird way, he had come to like the aliens. They were quirky, they were unpredictable, and they had their own set of rules which for some reason Alex had figured out better than anyone else. "All right," Alex said, leaning back in his chair. "I'm in. What's the situation?" The alien leader outlined a new issue, one that involved a diplomatic summit between three of the galaxy's most powerful factions. The factions had been at peace for centuries, but now they were starting to argue over new trade routes and resources. The last thing anyone wanted was for Alex to get involved, but for some reason, every alien believed that his human logic and sarcastic humor could turn things around. All right, Alex said, leaning forward. "I'll do it. But I'm not bringing up pizza again. I've learned my lesson." The alien leader chuckled. "Understood, Alex. But we do believe that your methods are effective. Peace has never been so simple as it is with you." Alex sighed again, but he wasn't angry. If anything, it was just another chapter in the ongoing absurdity of his life. Who would have thought that a guy who barely knew how to make it through a regular workday on Earth would end up being the go-to solution for galactic problems? As the communication ended, Alex leaned back in his chair and looked out at the stars. The universe had definitely thrown him some curveballs, but it had also given him a purpose. He wasn't sure how long this hero business would last, but one thing was clear. Whether he liked it or not, Alex had become a symbol of peace in a galaxy that had been divided for so long. And somehow, despite all the craziness, it was a role he had grown into. "Maybe next time," Alex thought with a grin, "I'll ask for a raise."